The iron tasted like blood. No, I wasn't bleeding. Not yet. But the chains around my wrists carried the tang of old metal and older violence, and my heightened senses caught every molecule of it. Around me, the sacred mating ceremony dissolved into chaos. Gasps rippled outward like shockwaves. Ceremonial music stuttered to silence. The scent of incense meant to bless new bonds was overwhelmed by something sharper: fear, rage, and the electric anticipation of a crowd that had just been promised entertainment. Move. Elder Garrett's hand clamped on my shoulder, shoving me forward. I stumbled, the chain between my wrists limiting my balance. My bare feet found purchase on stone that had been polished smooth by centuries of ceremony. Sacred ground. They'd brought me here in chains. Count your steps, Morgan. Grandmother's voice, a memory now 4 years buried. The world isn't dark to you. It's just different. But this wasn't the familiar corridors of the Crescent Pack House. This was the Grand Hall of Convergence, where all territories gathered once a year under ancient law. Where the Alpha King himself presided over the most important mating bonds in our world. Where they were dragging me like an animal. Crescent Pack presents this Omega for judgment. Elder Garrett's voice boomed across the hall, formal words wrapped around visceral contempt. Morgan Green stands accused of harboring cursed abilities. Of endangering our pack with unnatural sight that corrupts the natural order. Unnatural. The word they always used. Never rare. Never gifted. Always cursed, always wrong, always something that needed to be purged. I'd spent 23 years being small, being quiet, being grateful they let me live in the margins of pack life. I'd learned to hide what I could do, the way I could sense the emotional truth beneath every word, every gesture, every beating heart. My grandmother called it soul-seeing. The elders called it an abomination. Tonight, they'd decided I was too dangerous to hide anymore. The chains jerked me forward again. I stumbled, went to my knees. Stone bit into flesh, but I barely felt it beneath the wave of emotion that crashed over me from the assembled crowd. Shock from some. Pity from others. But mostly, morbid curiosity. They wanted to see what the Alpha King would do with a blind Omega presented like a criminal. Rise, a different voice commanded. This one stopped my heart. Deep. Controlled. Carrying an authority so absolute it seemed to bend the air itself. The noise of the crowd didn't just fade, it was erased, as thoroughly as if someone had drawn a blade across reality and severed sound from existence. Alpha King Harrison Joyce. I'd never met him. Never even been in the same building. But every wolf in 3 territories knew his presence, ancient power wrapped in modern ruthlessness, a king who'd unified fractured packs through strategic brilliance and, when necessary, overwhelming force. They said he'd rejected every potential mate for 7 years. That he trusted no one. That his isolation was as legendary as his strength. They also said he showed no mercy to threats. Rough hands hauled me to my feet. I swayed, disoriented by the silence and the pressure of so many eyes. My gift stirred despite my efforts to suppress it, emotions hit me in waves. The elders radiated vindication and barely concealed malice. The crowd pressed in with anticipation. And from the direction of that commanding voice. Nothing. No, not nothing. A wall. Smooth, impenetrable, revealing nothing of what lay behind it. Bring her forward. I was pushed again, chain rattling. My internal count said 15 steps to the raised dais where the high table stood. Where the Alpha King sat in judgment. 13. 12. 11. My gift reached out instinctively, searching for emotional anchors in the chaos. I found Elder Garrett's satisfaction at publicly shaming me. Found the nervous energy of younger pack members who'd never witnessed a formal accusation. Found currents of political calculation from visiting dignitaries who were already wondering how this disruption might benefit their own territories. 10. 9. 8. That's close enough. The Alpha King's voice again, and this time I felt it as much as heard it, a vibration that resonated in my chest. The hands on my shoulders released me. I stood alone, chains heavy on my wrists, acutely aware that I was the epicenter of every gaze in the hall. You are Morgan Green. Not a question. A statement delivered with unsettling certainty. Yes. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Small mercy. From the Crescent Pack. Yes. And you are blind. Heat crept up my neck. They always confirmed it, as if my eyes, which I knew were a clouded gray-blue rather than the sharp gold of healthy wolves, weren't evidence enough. Yes, Alpha King. A pause that stretched like wire pulled taut. Look at me. The command sent ice through my veins. Cruel joke or test? I couldn't tell. But I lifted my face toward where his voice originated, feeling the weight of my uselessness in that simple act. I was looking at nothing. Seeing nothing. Being nothing, exactly as they'd always said. Elder Garrett, the Alpha King said, his tone cooling several degrees. Explain to me why you've brought a chained Omega before my table during a sacred ceremony. Elder Garrett cleared his throat. Your Majesty, this Omega possesses dangerous abilities that threaten pack stability. She claims to sense emotions, to read others without permission. It's an invasion of. I asked why she's in chains. The silence that followed felt alive. She is dangerous, Your Majesty. Unpredictable. We couldn't risk. You chained a blind Omega. Each word fell like a stone. And dragged her through a sacred hall. In front of representatives from every major territory. During the most important ceremony of our calendar. I felt Elder Garrett's confidence waver, replaced by the first thread of genuine fear. We sought only to untie her. The words detonated like thunder. Gasps erupted around us. Someone dropped something that shattered on stone. I stood frozen, certain I'd misheard. Your Majesty, I must protest, Elder Garrett began. Now. I felt movement. Heard the whisper of fabric as someone approached. Then hands, different hands, gentler, worked at the locks on my chains. The iron fell away, clattering to the floor with a finality that seemed to echo through the vast hall. I rubbed my wrists, feeling the ghost pressure of metal against skin. My gift, freed from the tight control I had maintained, reached out tentatively toward the Alpha King. And hit that wall again. No, not a wall. Something more deliberate. As if he'd built a fortress around his emotions, stone by careful stone, leaving no crack for intrusion. Come here. His voice was quieter now, meant only for me. I didn't move. Couldn't. Some primal part of me recognized this as the moment everything would change. Forward meant stepping into the unknown. Staying meant, what? Being dragged back to the Crescent Pack in disgrace? Being exiled? Morgan Green. My name in his mouth sounded different. Not like a designation, but like something worth remembering. I won't harm you. You have my word. Words were easy. I'd heard promises from pack leaders before. But beneath his careful control, I caught something, just a hairline fracture in that emotional fortress. Curiosity. I took one step forward. Then another. My heightened hearing caught the creak of his chair as he stood. Stop there. I obeyed, less than an arm's length from where his presence radiated heat and power. Do you know what you are? He asked quietly. A blind Omega from a minor pack, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Cursed, apparently. No. Something in his tone shifted, and that fracture in his emotional wall widened just enough for me to catch a flicker of something I couldn't quite identify. You are the last living soul seer. descended from the bloodline that once stood beside every Alpha King as counsel and truth keeper. Your grandmother was Marianne Green, was she not? My breath caught. No one had spoken my grandmother's name in years. How do you? Because I've been looking for you for a very long time, Morgan Green. The hall erupted in whispers. My thoughts spun, trying to grasp meaning from impossible words. You brought her here to be punished, the Alpha King continued, his voice rising to address the entire room. To be judged as cursed. To be removed from your pack as a liability. Elder Garrett started to respond, but the Alpha King spoke over him. Instead, you've brought me exactly what I've been searching for. He paused, and I felt the weight of his attention return to me. Morgan Green, I claim right of courtship. The world stopped. Courtship. The formal declaration that preceded a mating bond. Reserved for matches of political significance or profound compatibility. And he just announced it publicly, binding himself by ancient law and witnessed oath. An Alpha King. Choosing a blind Omega. Who'd been dragged before him in chains. Your Majesty, this is highly irregular, someone protested. This ceremony is concluded, Harrison said, his authority absolute. Morgan will remain at my side. Anyone who wishes to contest this claim may address their concerns to me directly. No one spoke. No one dared. I stood trembling, unable to process what was happening. This had to be some elaborate punishment, some political maneuver I couldn't understand. Alpha Kings didn't choose broken Omegas. They didn't protect outcasts. Unless... I reached out again with my gift, pushing against that fortress around his emotions. And this time, perhaps because he allowed it, I felt something slip through. Loneliness. Not the surface ache of someone who spent too much time alone, but something deeper. The bone-deep isolation of someone who'd never been truly seen, truly known, beneath the crown and the power and the terrible weight of ruling. He was as alone as I was. Maybe more. Morgan. He spoke my name again, and this time I caught the thread of something else beneath his carefully controlled exterior. Hope. Will you give me a chance to explain? This is how destiny finds you, my grandmother had said once, pressing her moonstone pendant into my palm. Not as you expect, but exactly as you need. I still didn't understand. But standing in chains before a room of enemies, I'd expected death or exile. Instead, I'd been offered something I'd never imagined possible. A choice. I lifted my face toward where Harrison stood, this Alpha King who somehow knew my grandmother's name, who'd been searching for me, who'd just publicly claimed someone the world called cursed. Yes, I whispered, the word carrying across the vast, silent hall. Explain. The blind Omega they'd dragged in disgrace had just become the Alpha King's chosen courtship. And from the wave of shock and fury I felt erupting around me, I knew this was only the beginning. The silence shattered like glass. Voices erupted around us, protests, outrage, confusion bleeding into the air so thick I could taste it. Elder Garrett's voice cut through first, sharp with panic barely disguised as concern. Your Majesty, you cannot possibly. I can. Harrison's voice remained calm, but underneath it ran something immovable as bedrock. And I have. I felt him move. Not away, as I expected, but closer. His presence was overwhelming, power wrapped in control, heat radiating like standing too near a fire. Every instinct I'd honed over 23 years of survival screamed contradictions: run, submit, trust, fear. Then something impossible happened. He knelt. The Alpha King of 3 territories lowered himself before a chained Omega, and the shock of it rippled through the hall like a physical blow. I felt it in waves: disbelief, horror, fascination. Someone made a strangled sound. Another whispered a prayer. Morgan. His voice was closer now, level with mine. May I? May he what? Touch me? Kill me? I didn't understand the question, but I managed a jerky nod. His hand moved to my face, slowly, telegraphing the movement as if I were something wild that might bolt. When his fingers touched my chin, tilting my face upward, I stopped breathing. The contact opened something between us. My gift slammed into his with unexpected force, and for one crystalline moment, I felt everything. Not just surface emotions, but the architecture of his soul, loneliness carved into canyons, duty stacked like stones, and beneath it all, recognition. As if he'd been searching for something lost and had finally, impossibly, found it. Then his fortress snapped back into place, but not before I caught one more thing. Relief. You see more than they know, he murmured, meant only for me. Don't you? I couldn't answer. Couldn't think past the revelation burning through my mind. Around us, I felt the elders' emotions shift, and finally understood what I was sensing. Not anger. Terror. They weren't afraid of what I was. They were afraid of what I knew. My gift had always been a whisper. A gentle brush against the surface of emotions, easily ignored if I chose. But here, surrounded by hundreds of wolves in a ceremonial hall built to amplify power, it became a flood. I stopped fighting it. The room opened before me like a book written in sensation. Not sight, never sight, but something deeper. I felt the emotional architecture of every soul present, their truths laid bare in ways their faces could never betray. And what I found froze the blood in my veins. Elder Garrett, satisfaction wrapped around fear, and beneath it, relief. Relief that this was finally ending. Elder Moira, standing 3 paces behind him, guilt. Old, festering guilt mixed with resignation. The weight of someone who'd watched terrible things happen and done nothing. Pack Alpha Richard, silent in the crowd, conspiracy. Coordinated intent humming like a tuning fork, aligned with a dozen others I couldn't name. They hadn't brought me here for judgment. They'd brought me here to die. Publicly. Officially. With the Alpha King seal of approval so no one could question it later. The blind, cursed Omega, finally put down like the liability she'd always been. The realization hit like a physical blow. My breath stuttered. My hands trembled. Harrison's grip on my chin tightened fractionally. What do you sense? His voice was barely audible, meant only for me. I leaned closer, dropping my voice to a whisper that wouldn't carry beyond his ears. They're lying. All of them. They didn't bring me for judgment, they brought me for execution. They're afraid of what I can do. Of what I might reveal. His thumb brushed my jaw, a gesture that might have looked comforting to observers but carried a different message. Keep talking. They're hiding something. Something they think I might expose if I'm allowed to live. Harrison's presence shifted. Not anger, but something colder. Calculation. Political instinct sparking to life like tinder catching flame. He stood slowly, deliberately, his hand falling away from my face. When he spoke, his voice carried across the entire hall. Morgan Green will remain under my personal protection. Not as courtship anymore. As survival. Because the Alpha King had just understood what I was, not cursed, not broken, not an abomination. Dangerous. Dangerous to anyone who dealt in lies. The chamber Harrison led me to was smaller than I expected. My footsteps echoed differently here, stone giving way to wood, the acoustics intimate rather than vast. A private study, perhaps. Somewhere away from the hundreds of eyes that had tracked our exit from the hall. The door closed with a finality that made my pulse jump. We're alone, Harrison said, as if sensing my question. No guards. No advisors. Just us. That should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something loosen in my chest. The weight of performance, of being watched, gone. Why? The word came out sharper than intended. Why protect me? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Don't I? His footsteps moved closer. Ask me what you really want to know, Morgan. My hands clenched at my sides. Is this real? Or am I just another political piece you're moving across a board I can't see? Touch me. I jerked back. What? You want honesty. You can sense it, can't you? So touch me. Read me. Know for certain. It felt like a trap. But his voice carried no deception, and my gift, always attuned to lies, caught nothing false in his offer. I extended my hand slowly, searching. Found fabric first, silk, expensive, then the warm skin of his wrist. My fingers wrapped around it tentatively. The fortress around his emotions crumbled. Everything hit me at once, loneliness so profound it had carved him hollow. The crushing weight of a crown that demanded perfection and permitted no vulnerability. Years of smiling at potential mates who saw only his title, his power, his usefulness. Not once, had anyone looked at him and seen the man beneath. I gasped, nearly pulling away from the intensity. 7 years, Harrison said quietly. 7 years of carefully vetted matches. Noble bloodlines. Political advantages. Strategic alliances. And every single one looked at me like I was a prize to be won. His hand turned beneath mine, fingers curling around my wrist in mirror of my grip. You're the first person who's ever touched me and felt what's actually there. The most powerful wolf in 3 territories stood before me, and all I could sense was hunger, not for power or control, but for something as simple and devastating as being known. Marianne Green. Harrison spoke my grandmother's name like a prayer. Did she ever tell you what she was? What you are? My throat tightened. She said I had a gift. That I should trust what I sense beyond sight. She died when I was 19. She was protecting you. Harrison released my wrist but didn't step away. By keeping you ignorant. By letting the pack believe you were simply blind, simply less. Less than what? Than what you actually are. He moved, and I heard liquid pouring, water, from the sound. A glass pressed into my hands. Your grandmother was a soul seer, Morgan. The last of a bloodline that served as counsel to alpha kings for over 1,000 years. They didn't just sense emotions, they read truth itself. Intentions. Deceptions. Hidden loyalties. They made it impossible to lie to the throne. The glass trembled in my grip. That's legend. Children's stories. Stories exist because truth came first. His voice carried the weight of certainty. 3 centuries ago, a conspiracy of nobles had the soul seers murdered. Every man, woman, and child who carried the gift. They called it a purge of dark magic. Really, they just wanted to lie without consequence. But my grandmother survived because she hid. Married into a minor pack. Suppressed her abilities. Your mother inherited nothing, the gift skips generations. But you. He paused. Your blindness wasn't a defect, Morgan. It was camouflage. The gift manifesting so strongly it overwhelmed your physical sight. It kept you hidden. Kept you alive. My lungs felt too small. You knew. You've known what I was. I've suspected since you were 16. I had watchers in the Crescent Pack. When reports came of a blind Omega with unusual empathic abilities. He exhaled slowly. I ensured you were never claimed. Never sent away. I needed you to survive until you were strong enough to choose. Choose what? Whether to step into what you are. Or stay hidden. The implications settled over me like a shroud. If the world learned a soulseer lived, every wolf who'd built power on lies would come hunting. And they'd bring war. We returned to the hall together. The ceremony had dissolved into chaos, clusters of wolves arguing in heated whispers, political alliances fracturing in real time. When Harrison entered with me at his side, the room stilled like prey sensing a predator. Elder Garrett stepped forward, flanked by the Crescent Pack's council. His face was composed, but beneath it I felt desperation clawing for purchase. Alpha King, we formally request that Morgan Green be returned to our custody. This protection is unnecessary. We can manage our own. Manage? Harrison's voice cut like a blade. Is that what you call bringing a chained Omega before me for execution? Execution? Garrett's manufactured shock rippled through the room. Your Majesty, we would never. He's lying. My voice surprised me, steady, clear, carrying across the hall. I can feel it. Every word is constructed. Rehearsed. Garrett's face darkened. The girl is delusional. Her so-called gift is nothing but Elder Moira. I turned toward where I sensed her presence. You carry guilt. Old and festering. You knew what they planned and said nothing. A sharp intake of breath. Moira's voice came out strangled. I don't. Pack Alpha Richard. I pivoted, my gift mapping the room through emotional resonance. You coordinated this with at least 12 others. You needed me dead before I could reveal what you've been hiding. This is madness. Richard snarled. She's manipulating. Then let her read you publicly, Harrison interrupted, his tone glacial. If she's lying, it will be obvious. If she's not. He let the implication hang. The hall erupted. Some demanded proof. Others backed away from the accused elders as if guilt were contagious. I felt their power structure crumbling, lies exposed under the weight of truth they couldn't refute. Harrison moved beside me, not in front, not shielding, beside. Equal. Morgan Green speaks with my authority, he declared. Challenge her, and you challenge the throne. The elders who dragged me here in chains now stood accused before the entire assembly. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one kneeling. Harrison raised his hand. The gesture was slight, almost casual, but silence crashed down like a falling axe. Every wolf in the hall stilled, their attention riveted on the Alpha King who stood beside a blind Omega as if she were worth defending. This ceremony, Harrison said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space, has revealed more than it intended. Corruption hidden behind tradition. Murder disguised as judgment. Lies woven so deeply into pack politics that truth became the real crime. He turned toward me, and I felt the weight of his decision before he spoke it. Morgan Green. My name rang out like a bell. I claim right of courtship. The world stopped. Then exploded. Your Majesty, you cannot. This is unprecedented. A blind Omega with no bloodline. She has no rank, no allies, no. She has me. Harrison's voice cut through the chaos like thunder through rain. And that is all she needs. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was madness. Political suicide. An Alpha King didn't choose broken Omegas from minor packs. He chose strategic alliances, powerful bloodlines, wolves who could strengthen his position. Not someone who'd been dragged before him in chains. This violates every precedent, a noble I couldn't name shouted. The Council will never. The Council serves at my pleasure, Harrison replied, each word measured and absolute. And I have made my choice. Witnessed by every pack, sealed by ancient law. Morgan Green is mine to court. Any who wish to contest this claim may address me directly. The challenge hung in the air, sharp and unmistakable. No one spoke. No one moved. Terror and exhilaration warred in my chest, two sides of the same impossible coin. He'd just shattered centuries of tradition. Fractured political expectations. chosen me over every noble, every warrior, every carefully vetted match that had been presented to him for 7 years. In one sentence, Harrison Joyce had changed everything. And I had no idea if he'd saved me or doomed us both. The private chamber felt smaller now. Or perhaps I felt larger, no longer the frightened Omega who'd been dragged in chains, but someone on the precipice of a choice that would define everything. Harrison stood by the window. I could hear the subtle shift of fabric as he breathed, feel the careful control he maintained even in solitude. Ask me. His voice was quiet. Whatever you need to know. The question burned in my throat, demanding release. Am I your weapon, or your heart? Silence stretched between us, taut as a bowstring. Read me, he said finally. One last time. No, for certain. I crossed the space between us, my hand finding his chest. His heartbeat steady beneath my palm, strong, unhurried, unafraid. I let my gift pour through the connection. And found no shadows. No political calculation weighing the usefulness of a soul seer against the cost of claiming her. No ambition mapping out how my abilities could consolidate his power. No manipulation disguised as affection. Only truth, raw and overwhelming, awe at what I was, protectiveness so fierce it bordered on violence against anyone who'd dare harm me, and beneath it all, woven through every thought, every breath, love. Not the shallow attraction of a moment, but something ancient and certain. As if he'd been searching for me long before he knew my name. You can leave. Harrison's voice cracked slightly. Right now. I'll ensure your safety, your freedom. You owe me nothing, Morgan. Not gratitude, not loyalty, not. Stop. My fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. I've spent my entire life being told what I am. Cursed. Broken. Less than. Someone to be managed, controlled, or erased. I lifted my free hand, searching. Found his face. Traced the strong line of his jaw. You're the first person who's ever looked at me, blind and all, and seen something worth choosing. Morgan. I choose you too. My hand slid down to find his. Our fingers intertwined, and the rightness of it resonated through my gift like a chord perfectly struck. The blind Omega reached for the Alpha King. And he held on like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to earth. The hall doors opened. This time, I walked through them by choice. No chains binding my wrists. No rough hands shoving me forward. No cane tapping a rhythm of apology for existing. Just Harrison beside me, his presence steady as stone, and my hand resting lightly on his arm, not for guidance, but for solidarity. The crowd's energy shifted the moment they saw us. Shock rippled outward, but beneath it something else stirred, recognition. Not of who I'd been, but of what I'd become in the span of a single night. Harrison stopped at the center of the hall. I felt hundreds of eyes fixed on us, the weight of their attention no longer crushing but clarifying. The crescent pack brought Morgan Green before me as an abomination, Harrison's voice carried to every corner. They were wrong. She is not cursed. She is truth. And truth has been absent from these halls for far too long. He turned slightly, yielding the floor. To me. My heart hammered, but I lifted my chin and let my voice ring clear. I cannot see your faces. But I feel your fear. Your doubt. Your lies. I paused, letting the words settle. I also feel your hope. Your integrity. Your honor. I will serve this kingdom the way my ancestors did, by ensuring truth guides the throne. Not as a weapon against you, but as a mirror for all of us. Silence held for a heartbeat. 2. Then someone knelt. Then another. Not in submission, but in acknowledgement. The future queen stood before them, blind, unranked, from a pack that had tried to erase her. And they listened. Harrison's hand covered mine, warm and certain. In his touch, I felt what I'd always been denied, worth. Not despite my blindness, but inclusive of all I was. I'd spent 23 years believing I was broken. I was never broken. I was waiting for this moment, this choice, this man who saw me before I could see myself. The blind Omega who'd been dragged in chains left the hall as something far more dangerous than any curse. A queen who could hear every lie. And a kingdom that would learn to tell the truth. The end. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's more coming very soon. I appreciate you for staying till the end. Your support means everything.